Every horror fan will have an answer for what their favorite era of horror is. Mine happens to be going on right now. I got into movies and immediately gravitated towards indie horror, and I think it'll always be a comfort watch for me. So in this video, I will discuss a hidden gem, a couple a little less hidden, but whatever, from each of the last 10 years. These aren't my favorite horror movies, usually, one exception, but they are ones that make me happy to be watching this particular subgenre in this particular era. For 2015, we have The Similars. You can think of this almost as like a Twilight Zone episode. It's that classic sci-fi feel used to support a social message that both sci-fi and horror are always want to do. It's a Mexican film, and it does deal with, I think, a specific period or mood in Mexico's history. You can think of it as something similar to McCarthyism, I think. At least that's the impression I got. So that sort of thriller, that sort of suspicion, combined with, this sci-fi Twilight Zone-esque idea. It's not like a hardcore horror movie, so to speak. It does lean into some of like the fun charm of an older era of film, but nonetheless it does still have some punchy moments and a lot of fun along the way. I think it's a very well-balanced film and well worth a watch. 2016, We Go On. This is a film directed by the duo who made Yellow Brick Road, which is before the time limit for this video, but is a delightfully odd and promising movie. Kind of rough. But 6 years later, they returned with We Go On, which is much more polished and well handled, I think, in my mind. It has like a slight existential bent to it, and it's accompanied by some nice paranormal ghost hunting, which I think is always fun in my horror. The film has a good spectrum from humor to things with more gravity, and I think it uses the whole spectrum pretty well. It packs some nice punches, and it feels very genuine to me, and it's a movie I enjoyed quite a bit. 2017, The Evil Within. This is worth recommending, if only just because of the real-life story accompanying it. Andrew Getty made the film based on a series of powerful dreams he had as a child, accompanied with some influence from the Son of Sam killings. Filming began in 2002, and then work continued for 13 years until Getty passed away due to some medical complications, including some stemming from his methamphetamine usage. During those years of work, he did largely everything himself. There were, of course, other actors and some collaborators, but by and large, he did most of the shooting. He did animatronics work, stop motion stuff, other special effects, very much driven by his vision. The film was finished posthumously in 2017, at which point it debuted, and I think that, for me at least, on finding out the backstory, I had to check it out to see what that process results in. The film itself is dark and strange and somewhat erratic. It certainly feels like a film made in the 2000s more than the 2010s. You could tell it was a process. But undoubtedly, Getty had inventive and striking ideas. And this is a film, I think, that leaves you with a feeling that is very unique, very specific one that a lot of people will find extremely effective. It's also, I think, hard to deny there is unevenness, we'll call it, in the film. Some people will probably be harsher on it than others because there are definitely sequences that don't feel like they hit how they were supposed to. But nonetheless, it is a unique film, a very unique experience, and one that's informed by some really extraordinary events. 2018, Tigers Are Not Afraid. This is less hidden, but not mainstream. If you are on board at all with Guillermo del Toro's work, especially something like The Devil's Backbone or Kronos, I think, then you'll be on board with this as well, in all likelihood. It's not the same movie, but it is in the same vein of blending that realism with the fantasy and with the social metaphors. It's concerned about Mexico and its people and its history, perhaps more so its present, and in particular, it's concerned about its children. Child performances are understandably worrisome in some movies, like they certainly can take a film down a couple notches. But here, I think they're all great. They're all very effective at communicating their arcs and their emotion, and even though the film hinges on these children, I don't think it suffers for it. As a matter of fact, I've never cried harder at a movie than at this one. The fact that you can pull off that kind of emotional intensity with children, I think, is very impressive. It's not a fun movie. It's a movie that deals with these children's relationship to the drug wars consuming their particular area. Not a ton of fun. I cried. It's draining and saddening, but there's room for both fun and sobering reality in film, and this is just the latter. 2019, Sator. So this actually is one of my favorite horror movies, like a top 10. It's very much on the slow side. Would not be offended if someone labeled it as like a nothing happens sort of movie, However, I think the film, for one, has fantastic atmosphere. There are some really wonderful shots of the environment surrounding like our main location, some awesome snow footage. There is an unmistakably present audio mix that really gives character actions and movements some weight because it is a quiet film. So there's a lot of sonic room. So the audio mix can kind of grow and take up some of that space with these like tactile sounding actions. The main audio device itself is evocative, and I think it's a very fun metaphor in context of the film.
summon Sator, he will turn his attention to you. Submit yourself.
This, I think, is maybe the best example of how to set up a slow burn, as I think it's got just the right depth of hook, where it sets up an interesting scenario that's still in line with the film's aesthetic and general functions, but it still sets up something that's interesting enough to keep you around until the film really starts developing on its burn. I think it's got some genuinely unnerving moments in the runtime as well. I also like the specific way the film characterizes its main character. He's defined almost entirely through other people instead of himself, as he says just a couple of things in the runtime. I can imagine people reacting to that and thinking that he is kind of a thin character because there's nothing terribly explicit about him from him, but he is defined through other people and other people in his family. Love this movie. I know it's not going to be for everyone. This is not very well received. I'm very much on the high end, but I love it. I hope I've made a good case for it. 2020, All the Moons. This may be the least overtly horror movie on the list, if that makes sense. It falls more into the Tigers Are Not Afraid section of horror, where the horror is mostly there as a device to expand on an idea. This is a unique type of vampire film. It does go through history, life experience. It captures feelings of lostness, uncertainty, and needing a home. And alongside that feeling of longing, that poetic quality in the material, is some really wonderful technical execution. There are moments of great color and painterly composition and really cool locations. The main character girl turns in a very nice performance. Again, no worries about this centering around a kid. And this is one of the more unique vampire films I think you'll watch, and I love that we're still getting unique adaptations of this type of character in the 21st century. For 2021, Knocking. I love a good paranoia movie, questionable sanity and whatnot, while the mental health horror subgenre has gotten busy. If you're not yet sick of it, then I think you should absolutely throw this on. The director talks about the film dealing with the question of what happens to a person if no one believes them, and who owns the truth. Certainly not an accident that this film centers on a woman's perspective around these things. Given the historical record of, a lack of agency for women, it's certainly a match that the truth would be especially hard for a woman to obtain in her circumstances. To me, the main thing that stands out about the film is the sense of visual creativity. There are fun transitions, framing ideas, lighting choices. I just like the look of the interior of the apartment as well. It's clear to me that Frida has a nice sense for visual language. And I think it also does a good job economically describing the main character, keeping things moving, and using that visual storytelling, putting it to work. 2022, New Religion. This is a Japanese horror film that, in a sort of obtuse way, feels very Lynchian to me. I think Lynchian is sort of like an end product rather than a process thing. So even though it doesn't have that same checklist you might expect from something that feels Lynchian, the emotional end product is there, where it's something, at least to me, that you understand, but you're not 100% sure why. You get the feeling, but you have to work to nail down specifics. So to me, that's kind of the thing I get from this. The film's vision is striking and precise. It creates a menacing visual palette with these overwhelming colors, and the contrast between those overwhelming colors and this sort of mundane yet drained color palette of everyday things, which feel like they match the main character's mind. And maybe the best quality to me is the use of sound to really drive the film in some of those key climactic moments, or even the score just to set a strong mood throughout. It's such an inseparable part of the atmosphere. Arguably, this is another sort of mental health, grief sort of horror movie, but I think this one doesn't feel like it the same way you would expect. This truly feels like a special entry in that type of film. So even if you're tired of it, I think this is worth checking out because it's different. 2023, Sleep. Another less hidden gem, but still a gem. To me, this is a movie that excels in uncertainty. It feels like there are a lot of directions that it could have gone in its runtime, but it chooses good ones, and the process of finding out where it's going to go is very enjoyable. It's got some nice spooks. This is certainly a horror movie that is going for some scares, and I think it delivers pretty well. But it also does a good job of balancing it with some very natural feeling humor, perhaps more humor than you would expect, but certainly not in an ill-fitting way. Very nice compliment to the film. Good score as well. I really enjoyed it. It's also got an awesome climax. Can't get into details, but I think it's well worth your time to finish the movie. It's also got one of the most incredible editing transitions you'll ever see in a movie. But this is another film with just a good sense of paranoia. It's fun to watch it to its conclusion to see what it will do. For 2024, A Desert. I am recommending this one even though I think it has significant flaws. And I am recommending it because I think it's got so much wrapped up in it to think about and to contemplate. I think if Joshua Erkman, the director, is given another chance or two like this at a feature film, he will make something truly special. Because I think he just understands how to use the medium to communicate. This is a film that creates something powerful, especially I think in the edit, where it is kind of manufacturing these ideas and these connections and associations and things like that through cuts, through just a great understanding of how to use that to communicate extra information to us. It's also possible, like, of course, that the editor, Star Rosencrantz, is the driving force for this style. Somewhere between that combo, there's something special happening. And even in the film's weaknesses, I think there's a positive for the experience. I think one of the main weaknesses is that it feels not very obvious to me what specifically it's going for. But despite that, I think the clear intent in choices makes it a very interesting thing to break down and to think about and to chew on. And I love a movie that makes me do some homework. So I think this gave me some homework, whether it was looking to or not. So I enjoyed that. And really, A Desert, I think, is a great summary of what I find compelling about this particular era in horror. It doesn't have to be the best, it doesn't have to be good, but it does get me excited about movies and these creative stories and the storytelling. And that's really, what you're looking for. You're looking for movies that scratch an itch. And, the movies in this video are ones that scratch an itch for me.